Neo ran through the forest, his vision blurred by tears and further marred by the rain that fell. He stumbled over tree roots and rocks as he blundered through the brush. It wasn't long before he relented, exhaustion taking claim. Only the rain that filtered through the treetops cooled him as he regained his breath. And as he lay there, gazing up at the clouds, his mind wandered back to Galen. He remembered the love of Adriana and her kindness. She was essentially his mother, the only parental figure he ever had. He recalled those who mocked him and wished that he had never been born. Why must he suffer in this way? Why did the hearts of the people of Galen close off to him? His mind wandered back from the pits of self-wallowing to the river of grief that cut through his heart. In recent years, he knew she was very well aged, and that someday she would perish. He could tell because as time went on, she began to move slower and became more and more weak. But he never thought it would be so soon. He could still see the fire of life in her eyes. But apparently, he was wrong. Neo continued to gaze at the sky above as his eyes misted and the tears pooled over and poured down the sides of his face.
Why me?
He closed his eyes, remaining where he lay on the ground, resting his head against the root of a tree. The dark waves of exhaustion lapped away at his mind, until finally he tumbled down into the abyss of sleep. Brilliant, hot sunlight poked through the forest canopy, showering the environment in a golden yellow hue. Neo groaned and cracked his eyes open, sitting up and brushing leaves and dirt from his hair. After lying in a strange position atop the small grass all night, a knot in his back had developed. After a few moments, he stood up on shaky legs and looked around. Having explored the woods surrounding Galen during his youth, he understood he was perhaps a 5-minute trek east of the village. After taking a moment to recognize the area, he turned in the direction he knew a road was and began to walk. After only a few minutes of blundering through the bushes and patches of tall grass, he stumbled forward and found himself on a well-traveled dirt road, wide enough to fit almost 3 carriages abreast each other. He looked to the right, knowing Galen was just over the hill in the distance. Without even an inkling of hesitation, he turned around and continued walking east. He didn't know where this road led, or how long it would take him to see buildings or people, but he did know that traders used this road frequently. He vividly recalled seeing carriages roll into Galen from the east, loaded with trunks full of goods and treasures. Or he assumed they were. Traveling merchants seemed to have a consistent style of behavior, apparel, and always drove a horse-drawn carriage loaded with crates and trunks, usually gruff in appearance, which is unsurprising considering how they are always on the road. Traveling merchants were always ready to give a friendly nod or wave of the hand and give you well wishes. Most of the time, the clothes were a bit drab and dusty, and almost all of them wore some type of hat. Perhaps Neo might encounter one of these travelers. He wondered if one of them might allow Neo to join in, or perhaps he might become a merchant himself. If he did, he would be sure to steer clear of Galen. Neo chuckled. He was already feeling a little better. For what seemed like hours, and it may well have been, Neo continued to trudge along the dirt road. His feet started to feel sore, and he grew tired. Worst of all, his empty stomach began to growl. Doubt crept its way into his mind, and he started to question whether this was a good idea. In the heat of the moment, he hadn't stopped to think about bringing supplies or a skin of water. How stupid, he thought, as he smacked his dry lips. While the road he followed was indeed a well-traveled one, he hadn't seen a single soul since this spontaneous exodus began, and he had no idea how far he might have to go before encountering another individual. Neo stopped by the side of the road to catch his breath and looked back. He was in new territory now, for he did not recognize the forest surrounding him. Should he turn back? No, he would be laughed at. Plus, There wasn't much he could scavenge from the cabin he and Adriana previously occupied. He briefly considered perhaps he might politely ask for some supplies. But the thought of losing all the progress he made was enough to keep him going, for now. For another couple hours, he continued along, taking short breaks every so often. His feet remained sore, and his legs were ever more tired. The gnawing hunger in his stomach rose in intensity, and he sighed as the regret began to grow. Neo plopped down on some tree roots just on the edge of the road and heaved yet another sigh. Perhaps he might have to turn back after all. But then a distant sound reached his ears. He turned and looked down the road from which he came. Not far back, there was a bend in the road. But as the sound became louder, he was certain it was a carriage. The rattling and creaking of a wooden carriage, with the clip-clops of a horse, was unmistakable. Neo panicked. What if it was someone from Gallon? He rose to his feet and ventured into the brush, and hid behind a bush far back enough that he was hidden from view, but not so far that he couldn't see the road. Neo waited and watched as the carriage made its way around the bend and closed the distance. He squinted through the brush. It was an old man with short white hair, wearing an ornate tunic of deep blue and gold, with a beautiful dark blue cloak wrapped around his shoulders. His eyes twinkled as he gazed towards the horizon, all the while whistling a chipper tune. A few crates and bags filled with unknown goods rattled around the carriage behind him. Neo wondered if there was any food in them. Suddenly, the old man pulled on the reins to stop the carriage. He clambered down to the ground, standing in a pair of rugged leather boots. The man squinted into the forest, his eyes passing over the very spot Neo was hiding. Then, he spoke.
"All right, boy. Come out then."
Neo's eyes widened as he held his breath, petrified. How did he know he was here? The old man hooked his thumbs in the belt around his waist.
"We don't have all day."
After a brief moment of silence, the man turned and reached into the carriage. He held up a small mechanical contraption of sorts. It was a child's toy, the same exact toy that Adriana gifted to Neo when he was 8 years old.
"Funny little thing, this. I found it under your bed, in that little house."
Neo slowly rose to his feet, peeking above the bush. The old man smiled.
"There he is. Come on out. I'm not going to hurt you. I'll wager you're quite hungry too."
Neo stepped out from behind the bush and watched as the old man grabbed a loaf of bread and a skin of water from the carriage. His stomach growled, and he slowly made his way over to the old man.
Who are you?
"My name is Maze, and I've been looking for you. Here, take the food and water."
He took the bread and water, noting that the bread was fresh from this morning. He took a bite, and it was the most delicious bread he'd ever eaten. It was worlds better than the day-old scraps he and Adriana survived by. Maze leaned against the carriage and quietly waited as Neo scarfed down the bread and washed it down with water.
"Right, let's get moving. I want to be home before dusk."
Maze clambered up onto the carriage seat and hoisted the reins in his hands. He turned his head and looked expectantly at Neo.
Me?
"Yes, you. I don't see anyone else out here."
You're not here to take me back to Gallon, are you?
"No, there's nothing left for you there. Those people wouldn't know what to do about your magic, or your curse as they see it. I, on the other hand, do."
Neo's curiosity was piqued, and he found himself climbing up the side of the carriage to sit next to the old man. Maze clicked his tongue, and the horse began pacing forward. They sat in silence for a few moments as the carriage rattled along down the road. A question was burning in Neo's mind, and he couldn't hold it any longer.
What do you mean by magic?
"Well, from what I've heard, the stuff has been rolling off you like fleas on a dog for some time. Your eyes glow a faint blue at night, and apparently, you accidentally froze someone's goat all the way through just by giving it a pat on the head, is that right?
Neo nodded, feeling uncomfortable. The old man seemed to know everything about him.
I also gathered news of the widow's passing. Shame that.
He remained silent. The dull ache of grief burned away at his heart. Maze glanced over at the boy, seeing his pained expression.
Well, worry not. You can stay with me. I have enough room in my cabin.
Neo felt some relief and started to feel that he could trust Maze, especially since he mentioned he could help him with his so-called magic. But then, another question surfaced, and he spoke before thinking.
How did you find me? How did you know I was hiding behind the bush?
I've got a bit of magic myself. I used it, along with your toy, to locate you.
You mean you could see me through the bush?
I could see you all the way from Galen.
Can you teach me to do that?
Aye, I can. Along with many other things. Magic is quite wonderful when you use it right. But if you're not careful, it can be dangerous too. All in due time, though. There's a lot you need to learn before you start casting spells.
For the rest of the day, Neo's mind was filled with wondrous ideas of how he might use magic. For the first time in a while, he felt excited for something. Something new to do. Something new to learn. The first thing he would do, he promised to himself, was make a giant pile of the most delicious bread in the world. That way, he would never run out. Maze and Neo traveled all day long, and they only encountered one other individual, a kindly-looking man with dark blonde hair and a thick beard, giving a friendly wave and a warm smile as they passed by. There wasn't much else to see other than more forest. When the sun hung low in the sky, Maze used the reins to direct the horse to the right, down a branching path in the road. It wasn't a main branch, as the path was much more narrow, and if one wasn't looking for it, one might easily miss it. It only took but a few minutes before the carriage passed a tree line in the forest, and they entered a comfortably sized open area with various dirt paths leading up to a sizable cabin in the very center. It was the biggest cabin Neo had ever seen. Just to the left was a stable that currently housed 2 other horses. Maze parked the carriage next to the stable, and after unclasping and removing equipment from the horse, he led Neo inside the cabin. The interior was more spacious than the outside let on, which was confusing to Neo. There was a staircase leading to a second floor, and to the right sat a sizable table with several seats around it. Behind the table was a door that led to another room that Neo couldn't see, and to his very right was a fireplace that was currently ablaze. He had never seen a layout such as this before.
Follow me up these stairs. I'll show you to your quarters.
Neo followed the old man up the stairs, which led to a hallway that took a sharp right turn. Neo counted 4 doors. Maze turned and stopped in front of 2 doors adjacent to each other, just past the top of the staircase. He tapped the door on the right.
You should know, this room belongs to my other student, who will return soon.
Maze reached for the door on the left and opened it to reveal a bedroom with a single bed, a wardrobe, and a desk.
This is where you will stay. Best to rest up, because tomorrow we'll get started on your training.
Training?
Aye. You said you wanted to learn, yes? Learning the arcane also comes with learning discipline and how to fight. Washroom is down the hall. Be up and ready by dawn.
Maze turned and disappeared into one of the rooms down the hallway, leaving Neo standing in the threshold of his new bedroom. He sighed and closed the door. Today was a long and tiring day. He climbed into what had to be the most comfortable bed in the world. The mattress was clearly made of high quality. His cot back in Galen paled in comparison. He rested his head on the plush pillow and promptly fell asleep.
So when do I start? Today?
Yes, today is the day you will start. Let's go outside.
Neo followed the old wizard outside, excitement rising in his chest. He was looking forward to not only learning more about magic, and consequently himself, but also to distract his mind from the past couple of days. Maze led Neo around to the back of the cabin, where there was a neatly stacked wall of chopped firewood, albeit half full, and a pile of sectioned tree trunks next to a chopping block.
Fill the rest of this wall of firewood. If you get thirsty, there's a barrel of fresh water around the other corner.
I thought you were going to teach me magic.
Oh, I am. This is part of it.
But
Maze raised an eyebrow. Neo quickly shut his mouth and reached for the axe, as Maze turned and disappeared around the corner, presumably returning inside the cabin. He sighed, hoisting the axe in his hands, and began splitting the wood. He kept a good pace and continuously worked at filling the wall of firewood. As the sun slowly crept its way across the sky, Neo had no choice but to face his emotions. He tried his best to put them aside, to focus his entire mind on splitting the wood, breaking it into pieces, stacking it, and grabbing another log. But the weight that rested on his heart and the anger that perched on his shoulders could not be ignored. So he swung the axe harder and faster until he was gasping for air and sunk to his knees. Neo dropped the axe and rested against the wall, gazing out into the trees as he caught his breath. A slight breeze cooled the sweat on his brow. He could faintly hear birds tweeting in the distance as a butterfly fluttered about. The tranquility that surrounded him was only a canvas for the turmoil inside. His heart hurt and his mind raced. He was angry and filled with contempt. All of Galen hated him, despised him. How else could it be so? Faces flashed in his mind. Childhood friends who one by one quietly stepped away from him as he matured into adolescence. Neo looked down at his hands, and everything started to blur as a tear rolled down his cheek. With every fiber in his being, he wished dearly that Adriana was still alive. But of course, wishing it won't change anything. He wiped his eyes and stood to his feet. He picked up the axe and set to chopping the wood. The wall was almost full.